Poor mom couldn't buy food. But a stranger changed her life. Have you ever wondered if one small act of kindness could completely transform someone's life? This is the story of Sarah, a struggling single mother who was down to her last dollar when fate brought her face to face with a stranger who would change everything. Stay with me until the end to discover how this chance encounter not only saved Sarah from her darkest moment but created a ripple effect that transformed an entire community. If you believe in the power of compassion, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more incredible stories of hope and human connection. The fluorescent lights of the grocery store buzzed overhead as Sarah Matthews stared at the contents of her shopping cart, calculator in hand. At 32, she had mastered the art of stretching pennies, but tonight, the numbers weren't adding up. Her 6-year-old daughter Emma stood beside her, small hand clutching the worn sleeve of Sarah's only winter coat, unaware that their dinner for the next 3 days depended on the painful decisions her mother was about to make. "We need to put some things back, sweetie," Sarah whispered, her voice steady despite the shame burning in her chest. She reached for the small carton of milk, Emma's favorite, knowing it would have to go. Behind her, a woman in a business suit observed the scene, her shopping basket filled with premium organic produce and imported cheese. Their eyes met briefly in that fluorescent-lit aisle, and something passed between them, a moment of recognition that would alter the course of both their lives forever. "Mommy, I'm hungry," Emma said, her voice small but audible in the quiet store. The woman in the business suit stepped forward, her decision already made. 6 months earlier, Sarah's life had been different. Not wealthy by any means, but stable. She had worked as an administrative assistant at a local marketing firm for 8 years, living modestly but comfortably in a small 2-bedroom apartment with Emma. Her ex-husband's child support payments were inconsistent, but she managed to keep their heads above water. Then came the company restructuring. "We're eliminating your position," her manager had explained, not quite meeting her eyes. "Nothing personal, just business decisions from corporate." Sarah had nodded professionally, maintaining her composure until she reached her car in the parking lot. Only then did she allow herself to cry, gripping the steering wheel as panic set in. She had exactly $1,243 in savings, barely enough for 1 month's rent and utilities. The job search had been brutal. At interviews, she was either overqualified for minimum wage positions or underqualified for roles that would pay her bills. Her resume disappeared into online application portals, rarely generating even a rejection email. Meanwhile, the savings dwindled, and the rent came due. "Just a temporary setback," she assured Emma, who didn't understand why they couldn't order pizza on Friday nights anymore or why the air conditioning stayed off despite the sweltering summer heat. "Mommy's just between jobs right now." By month 3, Sarah had pawned her grandmother's jewelry and sold her car, relying on the city's unreliable bus system to get Emma to school and herself to job interviews. The child support payments stopped entirely when her ex-husband lost his own job and moved to another state to find work. She applied for government assistance, but bureaucratic delays meant weeks of waiting for appointments and processing. The food pantry helped, but their supplies were limited, and Sarah often gave her portion to Emma, going to bed hungry with a smile on her face and reassurances that she'd already eaten earlier. The eviction notice came on a Tuesday, a crisp white paper slipped under their door while Sarah was helping Emma with homework. 30 days to vacate. Sarah read it 3 times, her hands trembling, before tucking it into her pocket. Emma didn't need to know. Not yet. That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah sat at their small kitchen table and made lists by the light of a single lamp. Assets, few; debts, mounting; options, dwindling. She had applied for a position at a call center that morning. The hours would be difficult with Emma's school schedule, but the pay would keep them housed. She just needed to hold on until something came through. The next morning, she checked their bank balance, $27.14. It needed to feed them for 5 more days until the interview. That's when she decided to visit the discount grocery store across town, hoping to stretch those dollars into enough meals to keep them going. "Excuse me," the woman in the business suit said, approaching Sarah's cart. "I couldn't help noticing you seem to be calculating very carefully." Sarah straightened, her cheeks flushing. "We're fine, thank you," she said quickly, pride rising like a shield. The woman, perhaps 40, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense haircut, didn't retreat. "My name is Diana Reynolds. I don't mean to intrude, but I've been where you are." Sarah clutched Emma's hand tighter, torn between embarrassment and desperation. "Please," Diana continued, lowering her voice. "Let me help with your groceries today. No strings attached." "I can't accept that," Sarah whispered, though everything in her wanted to say yes. "We're just having a temporary setback." Diana nodded, understanding the pride that kept this young mother's back straight despite her circumstances. "I understand. What if we make it a loan? You can pay me back when things turn around." Emma looked up at her mother, too young to fully comprehend the situation but old enough to sense its importance. "Mommy, is the nice lady going to help us get dinner?" Something broke in Sarah then, not her pride, but the wall she had built around her struggle. A single tear slipped down her cheek as she nodded. "Thank you," she managed. "I promise I'll pay you back." Diana smiled. "I know you will. Now, let's get everything you need, not just what you think you can afford." That night, Emma ate a full meal for the first time in weeks, and Sarah allowed herself to do the same. As they sat at their small table, Sarah found herself telling Emma a story about angels who sometimes disguise themselves as ordinary people. "They appear when you need them most," she explained, "to remind you that you're not alone." What Sarah couldn't know was that Diana Reynolds had once been Sarah Matthews, a single mother struggling to feed her child, standing in a grocery store making impossible choices. The difference was that 20 years ago, no one had stepped forward to help her. The next morning, Sarah's phone rang with an unknown number. Expecting another collection agency, she almost didn't answer. "Sarah? This is Diana Reynolds from the grocery store yesterday. I hope you don't mind, but I found your number on the check you wrote for the small amount before I covered the rest." Sarah sat down on the edge of her bed. "No, I don't mind. Thank you again for your kindness. I'm interviewing for a job next week, and as soon as I get my first paycheck." "Actually," Diana interrupted gently, "that's why I'm calling. I own a small business consulting firm, and I need an administrative assistant. Someone organized, professional, and resourceful. Based on how meticulously you were calculating your grocery budget, I suspect you might be all three." Sarah's heart raced. "I was an administrative assistant for 8 years before my position was eliminated." "Perfect. Can you come in for an interview tomorrow? Bring your resume and your daughter. My office has a small playroom for clients with children." The interview was unlike any Sarah had experienced. Diana asked practical questions about her skills but also wanted to know about her life circumstances, not out of pity, but to understand what support she might need to succeed. The position pays $45,000 annually with health benefits and flexible hours, Diana explained. "We're small but growing, and I need someone who can grow with us." Sarah's hands trembled in her lap. It was more than she had made at her previous job. "Why are you doing this?" she asked finally. "You don't know me." Diana's expression softened. 23 years ago, I was evicted from my apartment with my 4-year-old son. We lived in my car for 2 weeks before a shelter had space for us. No one stepped in to help, but I promised myself that if I ever made it out of that situation, I would be the person I needed back then. She leaned forward. "This isn't charity, Sarah. This is an opportunity, one I believe you'll make the most of. The fact that it comes when you need it most is just cosmic timing." Sarah started the following Monday. The flexible hours meant she could drop Emma at school and pick her up without needing expensive childcare. The steady income allowed them to stay in their apartment, slowly rebuilding their savings and security. What Sarah didn't expect was how much she would learn from Diana. Beyond administrative duties, Diana taught her about business operations, client relations, and financial management. "I'm grooming you," Diana explained one day, "because this company is going to keep growing, and I'll need an operations manager I can trust." 6 months into her new position, Sarah found herself sitting across from Diana at a business lunch, discussing the company's expansion plans. "We need to hire 2 more consultants," Diana was saying. "The client list has doubled since you came on board and organized our systems." Sarah nodded, taking notes. "I've drafted job descriptions based on our most frequent client needs. And I've researched salary ranges to make sure we're competitive." Diana smiled, setting down her fork. "You know, when I saw you in that grocery store, I recognized something in you that reminded me of myself. That determination to solve an impossible equation for the sake of your child." Sarah looked up from her notepad. "I never properly thanked you. Not just for the job, but for that night. Emma still talks about the grocery store angel." "There's a way you can thank me," Diana said, her expression turning serious. "By doing for someone else what I did for you, when the time comes." Sarah nodded, understanding the responsibility being passed to her. "I promise." 3 years passed. Sarah had been promoted to operations manager, overseeing a staff of 12 at what was now Reynolds and Associates Business Solutions. Emma was thriving in school, no longer the quiet child who worried about her mother's furrowed brow. Their apartment had been traded for a small house with a garden where Emma could play. On a rainy Tuesday evening, Sarah stopped at the same discount grocery store where she had met Diana. It was out of her way now, but she shopped there occasionally, a reminder of how far she had come. As she rounded the corner of the canned goods aisle, she saw her, a young woman, perhaps 25, with a toddler on her hip, staring at the price of baby formula with the same desperate calculation Sarah remembered all too well. Without hesitation, Sarah approached her. "Excuse me," she said gently. "I couldn't help noticing you seem to be making some tough decisions." The young woman startled, embarrassment flashing across her face. "We're fine," she said automatically. Sarah smiled. "My name is Sarah Matthews. 3 years ago, I stood exactly where you're standing, trying to figure out how to feed my daughter on our last $27. The young woman's defenses lowered slightly. "I'm Jessica," she said. "And this is Tyler." The toddler buried his face in his mother's neck. "Jessica, would you let me help with your groceries today?" No strings attached. Jessica's eyes welled with tears. "I can't accept that. We're just having a temporary setback." Sarah heard her own words from years ago echoed back to her. "What if we make it a loan? You can pay me back when things turn around." As they filled Jessica's cart with groceries, real food, not just the bare minimum, Sarah learned that Jessica had left an abusive relationship 6 months earlier and was struggling to find work without a college degree or recent job experience. "Actually," Sarah said as they loaded the groceries into Jessica's battered car, "my company is looking for a receptionist. Someone reliable who can learn quickly. Would you be interested in interviewing?" Jessica looked stunned. "Are you serious? But you don't even know me." Sarah handed her a business card. "I know enough. Someone took a chance on me once when I needed it most. Now it's my turn to do the same." That evening, Sarah called Diana. "Remember that promise I made to you? About helping someone else when the time came? I think I just found my Jessica." Diana laughed warmly. "I knew you would. That's how it works, a chain of helping hands, reaching back to pull others forward." Over the next 5 years, Reynolds and Associates grew into Reynolds, Matthews and Associates. Sarah became a partner in the firm, specializing in helping small businesses owned by women and minorities secure funding and develop sustainable growth plans. Jessica had indeed become her Jessica, rising from receptionist to administrative assistant and eventually to client coordinator. She had moved into a safe apartment with her son and was taking night classes to earn her business degree. The chain continued. Jessica found her own person to help, a middle-aged man who had been laid off after 20 years at the same company and couldn't navigate the modern job market. He, in turn, mentored young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, teaching them the trade skills he had acquired over his career. On the 10th anniversary of that fateful night in the grocery store, Sarah hosted a dinner party at her home. Emma, now 16 and planning for college, helped serve the guests, Diana and her grown son, Jessica and Tyler, and several others whose lives had been touched by what they now called the grocery store effect. As they gathered around the table, Diana raised her glass. 10 years ago, I made a small choice in a grocery store that cost me less than $100. Look at what has grown from that tiny seed. Sarah smiled, surveying the faces around her table, people whose lives had been transformed not just by opportunity, but by the dignity that came with it. It was never about the groceries, she said. It was about seeing someone's potential when they couldn't see it themselves. Emma, who had grown up watching this network of support expand, spoke up. Mom always says that true generosity isn't giving people what you think they need. It's giving them what they actually need, which is sometimes just someone who believes in them. Diana nodded approvingly. And the beautiful thing is how it multiplies. Each person helped becomes a helper. Each life changed changes others. Later that evening, as the guests departed, Diana lingered. You've exceeded every expectation I had that day in the grocery store, she told Sarah. You didn't just succeed, you've created a legacy. Sarah hugged her mentor, the woman who had once been a stranger. I've been thinking about something bigger, she confessed. A foundation that provides emergency assistance to working parents in crisis, not just food, but rent, utilities, childcare. A bridge to help them through their darkest moments without falling into the poverty trap. Diana's eyes lit up. The Matthews Foundation? The Reynolds Matthews Foundation, Sarah corrected. We'll start small, maybe just helping one family at a time. But who knows what might grow from there. As Diana drove away, Sarah stood on her porch, remembering the desperate woman she had been, calculating to the penny in that grocery store aisle. She had learned that poverty wasn't just about lack of money, it was about lack of options, lack of support, lack of hope. And sometimes, all it took to restore those things was one person willing to see beyond the circumstances to the potential within. The foundation launched 6 months later, funded initially by Sarah and Diana but quickly attracting support from local businesses and community members who believed in their mission. Their first recipient was a father of 3 who had lost his job after a workplace injury. The foundation covered his rent for 3 months and connected him with vocational rehabilitation services. Within a year, he was employed again, and volunteering with the foundation. On a cold December evening 5 years after the foundation's launch, Sarah found herself back in that same discount grocery store. It had become a tradition of sorts, a pilgrimage to remember where it all began. As she walked the aisles, she noticed a young woman in the baby section, a newborn cradled in one arm while she compared prices with her free hand. Sarah approached her with a smile. "Excuse me," she said. "I couldn't help noticing you're doing some careful calculating there." The woman looked up, wariness in her eyes. "My name is Sarah Matthews," she continued. "And I'd like to tell you a story about a night just like this one, 15 years ago, when a stranger changed my life." Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can create the most powerful ripples of change. Sarah's story reminds us that we all have the power to be that stranger who changes someone's life, and in doing so, we might just change our own. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the extraordinary impact of ordinary compassion. Remember, you never know when your small act of kindness might be the beginning of someone else's transformation story.